Hello, everybody, and welcome to the DMD podcast. You might need another name for it, but Dark Match Drive podcast. Today we're going to be talking about AEW Revolution a little bit. We're going to get a fun game in, and we'll say hello to everybody, and then we'll check out. We'll just have a little bit of a secret episode 0 pilot type of thing going on here. So first, I would like to ask Jer, one, how are you doing? And two, what is the most recent wrestling you've watched?
I'm doing fantastic today. And the most recent wrestling I watched is probably some ECW TV from '96 earlier today. I was kind of running through some footage, which was interesting because somebody informed me that I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant about ECW TV. So the stuff on the WWE Network, while great quality, they've digitally enhanced everything. They've also cut out certain parts of it, where, you know, a 2 hour and 45-minute pay-per-view all of a sudden is 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I always thought that was weird for a long time, but I could never really remember what they were cutting out, right? And so somebody did this project. They call it the ECW project. I'm probably saying that wrong, but where they splice in the full footage and the audio and kind of recreate the full event with, you know, certain old, like obviously the old VHS footage was noticeable, but you get the full show. So I thought that was a really cool project. So I started watching some of the '96 TV, and it's just amazing, just all the inserts and the music videos and the stuff that you don't see on the network. That was really integral to what the ECW package is. And so, yeah, I'm kind of checking that out lately.
So is that like the surfer music when people do interviews and stuff like that?
Exactly.
I always thought that was hilarious.
I always
loved that.
Yeah.
It gave it a little bit of character and like definitely gave it the I guess it, like now we would kind of call it like an indie-ish feel, but like at that time the indies weren't really labeled that, as least I don't know.
I think people called it the Pulp Fiction promos because that was the song they used. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Johnny, same question. How you doing? And what is the most recent wrestling you've watched?
I'm doing fantastic and excited, you know, doing all the background work, getting this project off the ground and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, working hard at it, literally into the 11th hour and 59th minute, meaning we started recording and then stopped because we decided to add this lovely little, that's on this side, right there. If you see that lovely QR code there in the middle, you can join the Dark Match Drive community if you scan that QR code. I promise this isn't some 6-month-long thing that's going to lead you to random videos and quizzes that you have to take to answer a question for something you knew 6 months ago. So it'll just take you right to the community where we are all a part of. But most recent wrestling, well, since it is, you know, 9:30 on the East Coast here right now, March 7th, I watched the first little bit of NXT Roadblock about an hour ago. So I was watching that and yelling at my TV screen because you don't have jail cells in the middle of a sporting arena, but, you know, I'm being very pedantic and specific in this last week, and pro wrestling is making me that way, and I hate them for it.
Yeah, actually, I look forward to watching Roadblock. I've been really into NXT altogether. I've even been watching the Level Up show to get the, like, you know, I'm watching the, like, the lowest form of WWE there. So if you're into the Level Up, then you're like into the guys who just showed up in the door. It's been fun. So
I really liked Roadblock in WCW.
You mean Loch Ness?
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I went to Did you guys go to Roadblock when Roadblock came around here to Toronto? It was Moxley versus Triple H.
That was the.
I did not.
Yeah, that was the in-between pay-per-view they did complete. It was one of the network specials, right?
Yeah.
It was network special, only on the network, yeah.
Because everyone knew Roman won the Rumble and was getting the title match, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's do a quick 3-week storyline with Dean Ambrose.
Yeah.
Which was cool, but,
always good.
You know.
Didn't that
it was very memorable for me.
Didn't that have the NXT tag title match with, was it DIY Revival?
Oh, maybe? I think they did the women's.
that.
I think Natalia challenged at that show too with the whole Canadian thing.
It's the beauty of a wrestling podcast. While we're talking,
that sounds familiar.
We can randomly, look up things like Google and look up the results for WWE Roadblock, and actually
2016.
Figured. Oh yeah, I almost hit 2023. That would have been awkward. Would not have gotten me to the right event. I would have been very confused.
Pretty Deadly did not work the Toronto show.
Let's see the card.
Let me tell you what I recently watched. I'll tell you what I recently watched, and then you can show me the card.
All right, you do that.
Oh, the most recent thing that I watched was WWE Raw. I just watched it recorded all the way up till about the John Cena part. Right after that, I don't know what happened the last 45 minutes. Probably some bullshit. That show was pretty crappy.
Did they save the Sammy angle to the end?
At the very start, they had. You know what? The last match is going to be Sammy versus.
Okay.
Is it Sammy versus Solo?
Sammy versus Jimmy.
Anyway, I'm not down on WWE right now, so don't take me as I watched it and it was terrible. I thought this show was pretty bad. Whereas I've actually been super high on WWE lately, even Raw. I know a lot of people are like up on SmackDown, down on Raw. I thought both have been pretty good. So, Johnny, the card for Roadblock, since we're just
randomly discussing a 2016 premium live event that was aired on the network. I had two dark matches that night. Mark Henry defeated Randy Sharp. I know most names in the WWE and a lot of indie names in Ontario and around that. I have no idea who Randy Sharp is. Doesn't even have a Wikipedia entry, so I can't click on the name to find out who this person is.
Wow.
Goldust with R-Truth defeated Victor in the other dark match. That's not like that could have been a tag match or anything, but whatever. Opener was for the tag team championships was the New Day, Big E and Kofi version, defeating, here's a blast from the past, boys, the League of Nations.
Oh boy.
King Barrett and Sheamus.
I do remember this match.
Chris Jericho beat Jack Swagger. I was right, there was an NXT tag title match. It was the Revival defeating Enzo and Cass.
They weren't called up by then?
I do remember that.
It would have been just after this thing. It was just after that WrestleMania, wasn't it? When they got called up?
No, it was before.
No, it was the Raw after Mania when they got called up.
Yeah, but this show... Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, because this was for the NXT tag titles.
Right, yeah, so they got called up like a month later.
Charlotte defeated Natalya for the Divas Championship.
Oh, wow.
And here's one that's just sad even then. Brock Lesnar defeated the Wyatt family in a handicap match. That's Bray and Luke.
I don't remember that.
Here's one that just... Oddly, you'd think we discussed this and planned it because this match is oddly apropos to 2023 WWE, but Sami Zayn defeated Stardust in the semi-main that night. And in the main event, Triple H defends the WWE World Heavyweight Championship against Dean Ambrose.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I do remember Cass and Enzo, and I remember seeing the New Day enter before they entered because I was like I was where you could see behind the curtain, and they were like quite obviously glowing. They had the unicorn horns at the time.
Hard to miss that.
Yeah. So that was a fun show. I remember that. It was a good show.
It's always the random shows that we remember the matches of, right? Like, I mean, for me, I remember things like there was a 1996 house show in Kingston. I remember going to that was in the middle of the end of the Mr. Bob Backlund presidential run. They had a match with Adam Bomb that lasted like 7 seconds. It's the random things you remember from stuff like that. I remember seeing Owen Hart in the parking lot before the show because he showed up really late that night and walked through the parking lot with the fans. Walked through the front of the parking lot. Not the back of the parking lot, but the front of the parking lot. So hilarious.
I was going to say, was he wearing like blue jeans and a fanny pack and
It's 1996 WWF. Everyone was wearing a fanny pack and a windbreaker. Probably even a New Balance windbreaker.
They wouldn't let you in if you weren't wearing that.
All right. Let's get to our first segment, and of course, that is going to be the Premium Live review. Reviewing Premium Live events. I think we probably can't go through the whole card. This was, Tony shortened the card a little bit, so that was great, but it's still quite a bit to talk about. So I think we all take one match, and we all we'll have a little bit of discussion on each of the three matches that we pick, and I will randomize. Johnny, which match doesn't have to be your favorite, but which one do you want to discuss?
Well, I guess the one that I have the most things to say about, and that is the Texas death match that wasn't actually a Texas death match. If you're part of the DMD community, then we have a Discord where during the course of an event we'll talk in a chat room environment through the pay-per-view, which is always, of course, what we do. And you'll know that if you were there, you will know that I took great umbrage with the finish of this match, because you cannot win a Texas death match by tap out. It is inherently not part of a Texas death match. Submissions are not part of a Texas death match. But they kind of are, I guess. You could technically have a submission be a fall, but...
Yeah, they needed something after the tap out.
Texas Deathmatch, to a heart, going back to the 1950s when it was created in the Amarillo territory. I believe that's where it dates back to, right? It was the Amarillo creation? So. Mike DiBiase and Dory Funk Sr. and, all these guys. Texas Deathmatches are a thing that are the end of culmination of an epic feud which fit this storyline. Where the purpose is you beat them so badly they cannot respond to a 10 count. You pin them, and then they respond to a 10 count. Okay? This was not that. You had the 10 count and you had submissions being you can't mix the two. I have no issue with the finish as it was. My issue with it, the match itself was phenomenal. It was an intense, awesome, hardcore deathmatch style match between two very great brawlers. Probably one of the best garbage hardcore workers of the era, mixed with someone who has blossomed into a phenomenal cowboy style brawler. If Stan Hansen lost 200 pounds, he'd be Adam Page. And that's a compliment, absolutely, for him. But you mix these two styles together, and this is the closest to me to a modern Hansen Brody match. And that's saying something, because those are two guys that I love to watch. You put on a Brody match, and I'm a happy guy. I love watching Brody, and I love Hansen. I love all those old-style cowboy brawlers. But this match, it had everything you wanted in it. It had the barbed wire, it had the blood, it had the intensity, and then you ruin it with the finish, which inherently wasn't a bad finish, because it worked. If you sort of juxtapose the two matches in quick succession is what I hated about that card. Is the Texas Death Match being followed by the TV title match, or the TNT title match, because you used submission finishes in both of those matches. And the problem was, the tap out of Moxley was ruined when 10 minutes later, Joe gets knocked unconscious by a Wardlow sleeper hold. It takes away from that moment, because it makes Moxley look less than Joe. Because Joe got choked out, unconscious, cannot respond. It makes Moxley look weaker, despite the chain, despite the hanging. It makes it look worse, because inherently that finish is 1,000 times better if you do the proper Texas Deathmatch finish. And it's very easy to do on that. People are like, well, how do you do the Texas Deathmatch finish? It's very simple. Hangman hangs him, literally, with the chain over the top rope. Moxley fights against the chain, he struggles, and instead of tapping out, he goes unconscious and limp. The referee checks the arm, calls the fall, and then you deliver the 10 count. He's unconscious, he's been choked out, he's been hung, literally, from the top rope. He's not going to respond to the 10 count. He's out, cold. Count the 10, that's it, finish over. Moxley doesn't tap. You sort of get a modern retelling of the WrestleMania 13 finish with Austin and Brett. Austin doesn't tap out or quit. He is rendered unconscious, and Shamrock calls the fall. It's the same principle here. You keep Moxley looking like Moxley. You still make Hangman look like a big deal because he rose to that level. He became the Animal. And it makes everyone look great. And then, quite frankly, you don't do that finish in the next match because it was stupid. and took away from that moment.
That's
because
super fair. I think that makes sense.
It took away so much. Like, I know I'm sort of creeping into the next match as well, but it took away so much of that finish. Wardlow has been built on the back of the Powerbomb Symphony. And now he's finally got his toughest opponent, his biggest opponent is Samoa Joe, who has cachet and name value, and you choke him. Wardlow has never used a chokehold in his entire career that I can think of. Ever. You know, and beating Joe with his own finish adds nothing to that, but I have issues with Wardlow that are completely different, and I'm sure at some other point we'll discuss my my hatred of Wardlow as a character, but we'll save that for another segment. I think I've gone long enough. I'll let you guys.
I feel like the powerbomb thing didn't happen because it would be like trying to powerbomb a waterbed mattress. So that's probably why that didn't happen.
Yeah, because it would go.
I do see.
But it would have been awesome. Even if he just hits the one powerbomb, it's an epic visual, right? This is Samoa Joe. Gets him up for that powerbomb, and it's like, oh, damn.
I know Wardlow's strong, but I don't see it happening just based on, like...
That's the beauty of the powerbomb. Like, there's a million ways you can set that up. You know, Joe's doing the 10 punch in the corner, and you do the walkout powerbomb. Yeah. It's the same thing. You still get there, and it still makes Wardlow look better than a random tap out in a match that didn't need to have that finish.
That was the only match I didn't like on the card. But yeah, I don't want to spend too much time, you're right, talking about that match when we're supposed to be talking about Texas Death, which I agree too. And I'm you guys are super hardcore fans. You probably know a million different match types. I probably know 100 different match types, but I know about Texas Death Match, and I understand what it is. And I think a lot of people do nowadays. So I think a lot of people have caught that.
Also been used properly in AEW. Right? This was I think the third Texas Death Match in AEW, and the other two were proper Texas Death Matches with the fall and the 10 count.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember who, but
Hangman and Lance Archer.
I think Lance Archer and Cody.
That's true.
Hangman.
No, it was Hangman and Lance, but I think Lance and Cody also had one for the TNT title.
Okay, yeah.
That was when Hangman bounced off the stairs and we all screamed.
Good. Yeah, it was the match was really good. I liked it a lot. I thought it was great. Yeah, these guys really beat the shit out of each other, which is what you want to see from a feud that this feud is built on. These guys have been hammering the shit out of each other because they're both getting knocked out, so they could do nothing less than to continue to do that. They did that, and then when the match ended, I was like, Jared. I was watching with Jared. I was like, Jared, you're allowed to do that? And he's like, kinda. I don't know. He did. So it was, it did kind of get thrown off a little bit there, but the match was still fantastic. So honestly, it didn't bother me too much, but I was kind of
What I liked most about the match was how simple it was. They didn't overdo anything, and I mean, we had just watched GCW that weekend, and they did all sorts of crazy stuff like darts and light tubes and doors and your typical GCW stuff, which is fine. That's what it is, and there's an audience for that. But I had mentioned while we were watching it that I'm just so desensitized to all this hardcore stuff, and I just like simple. Give me barbed wire over anything, because you can do a lot of different stuff with barbed wire. Not knowing that a day later we'd get this Texas Death Match where they work an entire match around barbed wire boards, strands of barbed wire, all these different spots that involve barbed wire. And they got the chairs and the bricks, and they went a little bit outside the norm, but they didn't there wasn't a point where I was watching that match where I felt, oh, they're really overdoing this with whatever instrument of destruction they have now. It was kept very simple, and they treated everything they did as important. Just like the clotheslines with the barbed wire, or Hangman going off the top through the barbed wire, and just all the little things that they did all involved the barbed wire, and the fact that both guys were covered in blood sold the fact that, okay, if you get hit with the barbed wire, if you land on the barbed wire, you're going to get sliced up. And I love the little throw in. I think Tony threw it in on commentary, or maybe Taz, that barbed wire was used to keep people in Alcatraz, and these guys are just having a wrestling match with it and not holding back whatsoever. And so it was just a phenomenal 20-minute, Texas death match. And I mean, yes, I agree. The structure of the match itself was a little flawed, and they didn't really have the 10 count after the pinfall and such, which kind of sucked. But honestly, I loved it. It was probably my second favorite match of the night.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I think I can add in that you guys didn't was it had probably the best Deadeye that I've ever seen. That I thought, I usually hate that move because it makes no sense to me, and I'm always very logical in how moves work.
Well, his head doesn't hit the mat most of the time.
Yeah, usually the head doesn't hit the mat. You're like, oh, is this just like being on Drop Zone at Wonderland? I'm still alive. But no, it had one where it was pretty brutal looking, which was great. And I don't think I have anything else to add about the match. Any last quick comments?
I mean, it's just, for me, it's the visuals. We talked about all these different spots being important, but then the use of the barbed wire being important as sort of a simplicity that you don't see in a lot of, hardcore deathmatch style stuff. But you also got those moments of visual just, oh, damn. Even watching pro wrestling, especially in like these hardcore deathmatch stuff, these are the matches where people can be like, well, that's fake. That's not a real brick. It's not real barbed wire. This is all phony. It's Hollywood. You take a look at that shot, which I think is probably one of the best framed shots we've seen in wrestling in a very long time. When you frame that, I think it was the barbed wire chair in the corner, where you can literally see a clump of Hangman's hair just dangling from the barbed wire after it's been ripped out of his head. You're just like, you can't fake that! And it just visually was just, oh my goodness, and it's something, it's the simplicity of wrestling that you don't see in an era of, 10,000 cuts.
Literally, I mean, Moxley was laying on the floor there.
Well, I'm referring to camera cuts, but that's also true.
Yeah, he did the top of his head.
I think it was when Moxley got thrown over into the board with the wire on it, and he's like, but then he comes out, and then you see his back, and you're like, oh, that didn't look too bad, and then you just see the blood come out.
Yeah,
like he looked fine, and then droplets started coming out of his back, and you're like, oh, it's way worse than I thought.
You can see that on the back rake in the corner, too, with the barbed wire when they're up on the top rope. And after the Moxley scrape, and then you see the barbed wire raked up his back, and you see the strands of just blood droplets just bubbling up to the surface. You're like, oh, that's gotta hurt.
I forgot about the barbed wire back rake. That was fantastic.
Simplicity!
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
It was really good, and the one, actually, if we're talking about moments, if we're talking about singular moments, that really leads into the one that I want to talk about, which is the trios match. That knee to the face off of the Meltzer driver.
Oh,
by that. You know what? It was funny. We were watching that match, and right before we were just saying like, I don't know. I don't really know about this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
It should be fun. Like, I'm sure it'll be fun, but I don't know where they're going with this. And then, it just turned out to be, like, brutal kick by Aleister Black. Like, just absolutely, like, it was a clash of styles that go together because, it is lots of kicking. There's obviously the Bucks are super kick, but super kicks, they don't look brutal. What House of Black was bringing with knees and knees to the face and kicks was absolutely brutal. And so I thought it was really cool that the clash of styles between the Bucks' flashiness and the like just brutal, absolutely striking of the House of Black. I thought it was cool that the House of Black went over in it, especially a lot of people kind of down on Aleister Black. A lot of people saying, he's going to finish it up and he's going to leave and House of Black is going to do other stuff. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. But we're like, cool, they got something. And they went over, some of the top guys in the company. So I really enjoyed the match. And yeah, just that finish was amazing. I thought it looked absolutely amazing and it was cool. I don't know. Jerry, you want to add on to this one?
100%, I agree. And the cool thing with the House of Black is they're really good bases for the Young Bucks offense. They're big guys where the Young Bucks can come off the top and hit all this stuff, and you're not going to miss a guy like Brody King. So, and your point to Aleister Black, having his issues and whatnot, and people kind of being down on the House of Black in a sense. That was kind of my thinking coming into it. I mean, the Elite had only been champs, what?
This is last pay-per-view?
2 months? Yeah, not even.
Not even. It was January 7th, yeah.
Yeah.
The week after Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, so I was thinking, there's no way they'll just drop the belts to these guys that quick, because, AEW doesn't really do short title reigns for people.
Except the TNT Championship.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the hot potato title.
It's meant to be a television, WCW television title.
Yeah, exactly.
So, anyway.
And so when they started, after that knee kind of woke me up to think oh, wait a minute, there's a chance here. Like I said to Kieron, I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna fucking go over. And then just the succession leading into the finish was just perfect, and I think it's well deserved because unfortunately the House of Black, before they came back, were almost in a holding pattern.
Yeah,
they did the angle with the Lucha Brothers, which kind of went on forever. It was fine, the matches were great, but it was do something else. And then, so coming into this match, you're kind of thinking, okay, they've only had 3 weeks of build. They haven't really touched. The angle coming in kind of wasn't hot at all, in a sense.
It was just there.
They hadn't. Yeah, exactly, right? It was something I thought it was something for the Elite to do to keep them busy and get them on the pay-per-view. Yep. That was what I thought it was. And then as the match is going on, you're slowly thinking okay, they're getting their shit in here, and the Elite might lose this. And sure enough, that finishing sequence just put them to bed, and the crowd was the crowd wanted to see the House of Black win the titles by the end of that match. And that's a credit to everyone involved.
The cheering, they blew the roof off with the cheering there too. And I thought a really funny quick note too was that we had talked before, me and Jared, about Buddy Matthews and how I was like, man, this guy, they need to have him face top talent, because he raises himself up to top talent. He can work with, I feel like he could have a great match with Omega and any of these guys who are the top talent guys. And when he has matches with the lower tier type of guys, kind of stays with them. He doesn't really shine as much. He works up to the person working with. And it was funny, and right before the pay-per-view, Jer retouched on this conversation and said I'm not really too high on Buddy Matthews. And then he did the face, and we were like, that was awesome. So it was I feel like a lot of fans probably thought that. They were like, this House of Black guy's I really thought this Brody King guy would be big and awesome and cool, and they did the Darby Allin thing and whatever, and then he just kind of did some stuff after. So I don't know, Johnny, what did you think of this match particularly?
Going into it, I thought a lot of the same thing Jared did. That this was just another title defense for the Elite. The House of Black has really suffered a lot, not necessarily anything of their own making. Yes, Aleister, dealt with his personal issues back in the fall, coming out of Brawl Out when he took, his hiatus and went and got himself right and came back and did whatever he had to do during that period. But, going into that, they hadn't really done, they were just coming out of the feud with the Lucha Bros, and that was Okay, that was fine. I mean, the most important thing the House of Black has done for most of the last year was, as crazy as it sounds, the Varsity Blondes feud. You know, where you saw the descent of Julia Hart into joining the group, which was probably the best thing they've done as a collective, in my opinion. I mean, the Brody King feud with Darby Allin was great, but that wasn't about the House of Black. That was about Brody King.
Man, I forgot that Varsity Blondes thing.
You know, and it's just, ever since they came back in October, November, whenever it was, you know, heading into the lead up to Full Gear in November, they weren't neutral. They weren't the stars of the stories they were a part of. You know, okay, they had the feud with Eddie and Ortiz, but that wasn't about the House of Black. That was about the slow turn of Eddie and Ortiz, you know, and that splitting apart, and Eddie going back to being, you know, the last of a dying breed, you know, being the last outlaw, being Eddie Kingston again. And I'm all for that, by the by. But they were just there. They were a part of it. You know, it wasn't about them. They were co-stars. You know, they were along for the ride. They were just there. And then you get to this feud, and it's like, great. The match is going to be great because, you know, like Jared said, this was a PWG match. You know, it was exactly what you expected. It was great. You know, we talked about Buddy being sort of that guy, and he is, but he's sort of like he's a wrestling chameleon. You know, and that's, you know, people knock on guys like, and this is the comparison for me. He's sort of like Dolph Ziggler, in that, you know, a lot of the top stars and the top guys wrestle down. You know, the top elite guys, they wrestle down to the other guys in the ring. So when you get them in there with the other top guys, then they put on, you know, the classics, the 5 stars, the 6 stars, the 7 stars, the stuff like that. You know, when you get Kenny in the ring with Okada, it's going to be a phenomenal match. But if you put Kenny in there with like somebody on that next tier down or that lower tier, it's still going to be a great match.
Make fun of someone. Tell me who sucks.
You know, but like you can pretty much pick any guy, really. You know, put Kenny in there with
Yoshihashi.
Exactly. He is a prime example of making top talent wrestle down to his level. And then they still present him as this top tier guy when he's not. He is hot Toru Yano is another wrestling chameleon. You know, he wrestles up. And this, you know, there's those guys that wrestle up to that level. You put them in, no matter who you put them in there with, you're going to get a great match. And, you know, I compared to Dolph Ziggler, but I think the real comparison is Bret Hart. And
I was hoping for Hiroki Goto, but you do you.
I think Bret Hart is the ultimate wrestling chameleon. Because no matter who you put him in the ring with, he's going to have a great match that fits their style. Like, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels is a completely different match than Bret Hart, Diesel, but both matches are still amazing matches. You know, like, Bret Hart made Tom McGee look like the next coming of Hulk Hogan. You know? Like, you know...
If that match had got one more minute, it would have all fallen apart.
Well, but he knew when to shut it down, right? So it's like, you know, Buddy is that guy. When he wrestles with lower tier talent, he still makes them look good, but he gets his shine. But you put him in there with a Kenny Omega, or, you know, God forbid we ever get him Okada, that'd be a phenomenal match. But
we did get it.
With Buddy?
Yep.
When did that happen?
Last November?
Oh, was that on Strong?
One of the New Japan Strong pay-per-views, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Mostly because I don't watch New Japan Strong. But
I have not watched a single episode. They're like on episode 125.
Oops.
Yeah.
Take away our cards, I guess. We watch real New Japan from Japan.
Yeah, right?
New Japan Strong? What's that?
Can't
Roster, get the fuck out of here.
But it's like, we talked about the knee. Like that spot there at the end, coming off the Meltzer driver setup, where he hit that knee and it like stopped everything. Like Jared and Kieron, you both mentioned that, you know, you guys watched it together and you had that moment. It was like, whoa! It came out of nowhere and hit it. I had the same reaction. I'm, you know, over here watching it with my family, and it's like, oh god, he tried to kill him with that knee. It looked that good, you know. And again, we mentioned, you know, another cheap plug for the Discord. Right in there, you know, I popped for the knee, and then 30 seconds later, you popped for the knee. You know, like, that's wrestling, you know, and there's those spots, and nobody expected it. That was the beauty of it. None of us suck. Every one of us put down on our betting card, Elite over, great match. That was the line. That was the betting card, and nobody saw the title change coming, and it happened, and everybody's happy because hopefully it means that, you know, we're going to see more of the Black, oh my God, the House of Black. I kept wanting to say the Black Order, the Black Family. I'm like, what? No, it's none of those things. But, you know, hopefully it means they're going to get something from the House of Black that is good, because they are all phenomenally talented people. And like I said, Julia Hart has come out of nowhere to be this, you know, ultimate mix of Sherry Martel and Miss Elizabeth in it, which is an awkward combination, yet she's pulling it off so well, and I love it.
Imagine how many people lost money on DraftKings for that match.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I would bet 90% for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It did seem, and that's, I mean, one of the beauties that they still have going in AEW is they will usually throw at least one curve every pay-per-view. Like, this match is a throwaway, and then you're like, oh, okay, never mind. Just cool because it helps, but it helps believability for the entire card, which is great. I think we're on Johnny. Johnny, what match? Wait,
I did Texas Death, so it's Jared.
Oh.
All right.
Fine, we'll listen to Jared talk. I tried my best, guys.
It's fine unless he starts telling jokes.
So, my match, you guys kind of left me with it, which I was kind of surprised by. I thought I was going to get Texas Death, but I'm going to go with the main event, the 65-minute Iron Man match between MJF and Bryan Danielson. I believe it is the greatest Iron Man match in history. Shawn and Brett can get the fuck out of here.
Shawn and Brett was never the greatest Iron Man match in pro wrestling. I'm sorry.
Very true. I mean, Rude and Steamboat was better than Brett and Shawn.
I think Rude and Dustin the year later was also better than Shawn.
Exactly, right?
I think Triple H and Rock in 2000 was also better than Shawn and Brett. Sorry, guys, but Brett Shawn sucked.
Yep. And so the thing I liked about MJF and Danielson was they kept a pace where you knew they were going 60. It was paced perfectly. They chain wrestled a bit at the start, then they, messed around a bit, and then Danielson got the first fall. And then they kind of turned it up. Because then you get into the blood, and then you get into the double falls with the low blow, and MJF scoring the 2 quick falls, which was brilliant. I absolutely love that spot. Mm-hmm. Because it makes sense that a heel would do that and risk, hey, I'll give up a fall and then get 2, so I'm up. Tied, but still. And MJF, and I said this going into the match, that the story they told with MJF not being able to keep up with Danielson made sense. MJF is not a workhorse wrestler. He's not the kind of guy who will go and hustle for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. He will work his gimmick into the entire match. So he can go, he worked 42 minutes with Punk, that they mentioned, on TV, and it was an MJF match, where they had the Gaga with the chain and all that. And so I knew coming in that, hey, we're not going to get a Danielson workhorse match. We're going to get that with MJF sprinkling in a bunch of stuff, which is exactly what we got, and it was perfect. I mean, MJF hitting the elbow off the top, and those tombstones, the tombstones off the ropes, and the tombstone on the table, and I'm just like, oh my god.
The Avalanche tombstone off the top.
Exactly, right? And so, and the thing I thought was weird was, and so I didn't clue in at first, but so Danielson caught MJF with the top rope headbutt. Like, legit headbutted him, and MJF did not blade. He had the lump above his eyebrow, and the thing that clued me in was MJF is crawling to the corner immediately afterwards, just gushing blood. And so he gets up, and I think the spot might have been Danielson comes in and ducks the line and goes to the opposite corner and comes back with the Bisaiku knee. So MJF is walking towards the center of the ring and doesn't throw a line for Danielson to duck. Danielson just ducks and nothing's there. And that was when I was like, oh shit, MJF is on fucking Dream Street right now. And, I mean, obviously he was okay, but... and that's another thing I kind of thought about with the finishes on this show. We had their two top baby faces tap out to submissions. They didn't give up, they didn't pass out. They tapped out, and it was interesting because, I mean, not necessarily Hangman being a heel and whatnot, but like MJF comes out of this looking so strong, and it was brilliant after. So I thought it was kind of goofy, but it made sense for MJF how they brought in the oxygen tank and all that. I thought that was cute, and Danielson obviously didn't need it, and he was doing jumping jacks, and he's like, "Hey, I still got more in me." And I didn't think of it at first, but I mean, they ended up using the oxygen tank for the finish because MJF goes to the floor, and I loved the way they built to it because my favorite Royal Rumbles are the matches where you get 10-15 minutes with the last two guys, where it's sudden death, and they kind of have a little match. Well, the sudden death in this Iron Man match was essentially a 5-minute match thrown into this bigger story, and the amount of time, and MJF getting cut off from every single opportunity to cheat fit so perfectly, where he starts the sudden death with the belt, and Bryce is like, go ahead, use it, you will be disqualified because it's only one fall now, and there's no champion's advantage. I thought that was so brilliant. And then he's about to, he's got the ring on, and because I noticed, Kieron and I noticed that, hey, he's still got the ring on, that might play into the finish.
I had assumed it popped off. Like, I was like, there's no way he kept it through that. It's going, he ducked it, he hit the spot, they did it, and it goes away, and then all of a sudden you see the hand, you see him start to bring it up right before Bryce notices, and you're like, oh crap, that's still on his finger. And then at the same moment I figure it out is right when Bryce sees it, and you can see Bryce looking at it and just ripping it off his finger and sticking it in his pocket, and it's like, you reach that point where it's like, for me as a fan, I'm sitting there, and I'm a jaded wrestling fan because I've been around for so long, and it is a testament to a wrestling match when the guys like you and me who have been at this for 30 years get so invested in a moment that you are a child again, that you regress back to that 10, 15, 10, 12-year-old kid watching this and just being in the moment, and it's 12 o'clock at night, and I'm in the living room like, oh my god, he's going to do it! He's going to do it! Like, especially when he pulls out the one thing his AEW career has been completely devoid of. He saved it for exactly the perfect moment, which is exactly why Bryan Danielson is the testament pro that he is. Because he got into that corner, went for that Busaiku knee in overtime, and all of a sudden you feel the crowd start to feel the moment, and then all of a sudden you see the finger and the point. And it comes back down, you're like, oh, wait a minute! And it goes up again! And everybody knows what's happening here! And it's like, oh my god, it's WrestleMania 30, you feel it, the crowd feels it, which is something I did not expect. This is fucking Bay Area, California. That's not a wrestling crowd. And this felt like Chicago, Toronto, Montreal, New York. This felt like one of the cities, one of the hearts of pro wrestling cities. And this is fucking Oakland, California. Like, excuse me, you have no business being this hot. And it felt it. Like, it had the atmosphere, it had the moment, and the yes breaks out. And it's like, because the stories of Bryan being like, yeah, I told Vince I wouldn't do it. I'd leave it. That was their thing. That's a WWE thing. I'm not going to use it. And he made that promise. And it's like, you take Bryan at his word. He's not going to use it. He's not going to bring it out of his bag. Here he is, 63 minutes into a match, and he looks up, and the hands start pointing, and the crowd gets into it because they realize, oh, we can do this now. Because the crowd's tried to do it before. They tried to do it in the first match with Kenny. They tried to do it in the matches with Cole. They've tried to do the yes chant, and Bryan just cuts it off. Like, no, we're not. This is not the time. It's not. But then he buys into it, and then you do it, and it goes badly, and it's like, oh. And then 2 minutes later, you're right back there again, and it built back up to the crescendo, and it's like, this is gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. He's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. And then no, and it just internally, I felt defeated as a wrestling fan because what do we have to like? That's the beauty of MJF. It's that, you know, I love him, I hate him. It's that emotional investment you have that's like, what did we have to do to beat this guy? Bryan Danielson goes 65 minutes and he can't do, like, you know, there's so many, like, if there's any gripe I have with the match, and this is me personally, again, being pedantic and personal and specific, is that finish. I loved it, it was great, but it should have been milked just a little bit longer. And once Bryce did the hand up in the bell lock, and he gets to the 2, when he fights it out, and he powers out as the beautiful baby face, I'm like, oh, he's gonna get. Me, as the booker, like as the wrestling thinker, I probably would have MJF transition, hit him with, he already had the arm there, just hit a few forearm rake cross forearms to sort of knock him loopy again, and then lock in the salt to the earth and beat him with his own finish. Because I think that it boosts up MJF and his finish just a little bit more, so that now it's, you know, I beat you with my move. I beat you. You know, I didn't.
That's true.
You know, like, and that's the only thing.
Because
it's
like Danielson, I can see that. I can see that because it's Danielson. Because like tapping out Danielson with your move is a bigger thing than tapping out even.
Especially
like,
because
it's bigger than tapping out Moxley with your move, because Moxley, you know, he's tough. But
the first time Moxley has tapped out in 10 years.
Which made it work. But again, you know, this is another one of those reused to finish. I'll point out, Wardlow beat Joe with his finish. You know, that's the second time that a guy had been beat by his own finish. And you didn't need that. Like, Wardlow doing it, I guess, because it's a chokehold. You know, anybody can slap on a choke and beat somebody else. But, you know, MJF doing it...
Wardlow match.
It did not help the pay-per-view at all.
Oh, actually, I said that when I was leaving. I was like, you know what? That's the only match that was... The match wasn't even good. You know, as far as I was concerned, I didn't think the match was very good at all. I left that match thinking, like, I don't know if Joe has much left to give. Beating up small guys. He's still really good at beating up small guys.
The problem isn't what Joe has left, because Joe is at the point in his career where he's the stepstone. You know, he's sort of in that William Regal circa 2008, 2009 spot. You know, he's up near the top of the card, and you've got to go through him to get to the main event. And that's fine. That's a perfectly great spot for someone like Joe to be in, because he's a great worker, and if you get past him, you're going to have that, I beat Samoa Joe, I can be a main eventer now. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a necessary part of a properly structured roster. It's having those stepstone guys. Wardlow is...
no, that makes sense. You gotta have a heel one, you gotta have a face one, right? You gotta have
exactly.
I think you gotta have...
Well, and I think that role works for Joe more in Ring of Honor than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So Joe being the guy to beat as kind of the gatekeeper, like UFC has gatekeepers. And, like, you know, you beat them, and, you know, you're made, right? You know, Anderson Silva, you know.
I know, I mean, Donald Cerrone for a long... Yeah, there's a lot of...
Yeah, exactly, right? So Joe now fits that role where, he's the TV champ, and he's also the Ring of Honor legend who's there. I mean, unfortunately, you know, Jay Briscoe, rest in peace. I mean...
Claudia doesn't have that ROH cachet. Like, he was a big part of the roster for a long period, but...
Yeah, but he was never the guy.
That guy,
Yeah, right? Not... So, I mean, he's fine, but he's not viewed in that way, you know? So Joe is perfectly...
Not get too far into Wardlow Joe again.
Wardlow just needs to go back to being somebody's muscle. He's just...
Well, he's going to get muscled around by Hobbs in a couple days.
I hope so, because Hobbs is actually interesting.
I hope so, too. Actually, Hobbs is one of my guys right now, but we're not going that way either. Pull back in. Job. That is going to be my job this whole podcast, because we could have talked an hour and a half we could have talked longer than the pay-per-view about each match with these two guys here, which is why I will be pitting them against each other in a couple of minutes.
He's going to strangle Wardlow with that Sonic ring.
Fucking Wardlow. The thing that I like is I feel like, I mean, Daniel's character can only go so far right now. Like, I feel like he's a well fleshed out character. MJF's character gets so much from this. One, he gets to beat another guy in his own style, which starts to get people into saying, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, he talks on the mic, but he's not the greatest wrestler. Well, we just saw he's a pretty damn good wrestler. I loved that they added in the water breaks. I thought that was awesome. I loved every time he went, and the other water incident that happened was kind of cool. Unless you believe the tequila theory.
I kind of do, because you see the mom's face when he takes the drink, like, oh, if that's just water, I don't think it's quite that reaction, I guess. But either way,
maybe I don't know. We talked about this. I talked about this for quite a while this morning with a few other people in our Discord and Facebook group, Dark Match Tribe,
which you can join by clicking the QR code right down there.
Wait.
Scanning the QR code. Don't try and click it. Nothing will happen. You'll pause us. You'll pause us wherever you're watching us. Don't do that.
or you find Dark Match Drive on Facebook. But I really loved that. I really like that helps his character. He had to work up to it. I loved the facial expressions that he used when he couldn't hit with the title belt, couldn't hit with the ring, because that made me feel like he thought, like the way that, I don't know if it's me projecting myself on him, but that made me think like he's like, oh damn it, I'm gonna have to do this like the wrestling way. I'm actually gonna have to try to beat him without cheating. And I feel like he went to a place where he was gonna try that, and then later he ended up being like, oh, there's a oxygen can over there. Like he went through I feel like it's almost like what Triple H went through in the old in the chicken shit heel days, where he was kind of beating people by cheating, but then he went through the Mick Foley matches where there was no cheating, and we're like, oh shit, Triple H guy, he's actually kind of a badass too. Like does cheat, but he doesn't have to cheat. I feel like
he's good enough to do it without the cheating. So there's heat in that fact.
The whole match was built on.
That's where this is going.
Yeah, I mean the whole match was built on you can't wrestle. You can't. I can go 60 minutes in my sleep. You can't go 60 minutes on your best day. And he went out there and he went 60 minutes, and did it without really resorting to too many underhanded attacks. I mean, yes, there was, the first two falls where he resorted to nefarious underhanded tactics, but legally within the context of the match. It didn't really give him an advantage. It leveled the playing field.
That was a smart thing.
It was a big brain play. But then you get into overtime, and and then suddenly it's like, you said I couldn't go 60, I went 60. I'm done with you. I did it your way. You couldn't beat me. That's just as important. You couldn't beat me in 60. But now I'm just going to end it. Now I'm just going to put it to bed. I'm done with you. I went 60. You couldn't beat me, and you had to beat me. That's, we said there's no champion's advantage, but there sort of was, because 60-minute, Broadway is still champion's advantage. I went 60, it was a tie. That's it. I'm done. And then he went to the, fine, now I'm going to cheat to win because I don't want to be here anymore. I'm done. I'm tired. I've gone 60. I lived up to your challenge. I exceeded your challenge. I competed at your level with you for 60 minutes, and you said I couldn't do that. Well, now I'm done, and you can't compete at my level. And he did everything. Everything. He used the belt, tried to use the belt. He tried to use the ring. Just general underhanded. They hit him with the low blow and roll up and hook the tights. And he did everything. And then finally you get to the point where he uses the bottle, the oxygen tank, and he still can't put him down. He still can't finish it because Brian still powers out.
Yep.
And then he slaps in the little bell lock just a little bit longer and just a little bit harder, and then finally taps out. And that's why it sort of felt anticlimactic to me. Because you'd built up to the moment, and you thought it was going to be intense and epic and beautiful, and then it just sort of happened. And that's not a bad thing. Like, it just didn't
quite feel like that. So
it just kind of happened. To me anyway, it just sort of happened. Like it was a oh. You know, like, you think they're building to the next crescendo once he powers out with the arm, and then it's like, okay, what's next? Oh, he's just not. That's it.
It's like you're watching
Oh.
One Man, One Jar. You're like, oh.
Please don't Google that. Please
That
don't.
is not where the QR code will take you, I promise.
Please don't
God
Google
damn
that.
it, we just lost all the QR code stuff. We will. We promise we'll get a new one for next week. Okay, well that's gonna wrap up the premium live review, and we're gonna go to something fun that I call "Will You Stop," which is of course a reference to Gorilla Monsoon constantly telling Bobby Heenan to stop making stupid jokes. The way this is going to work is I'm going to throw really quick questions. They're usually yes or no or one or the other. I want you guys to answer. Today we'll go Jer, then Johnny. And if you guys disagree, if you guys give me the different answer, and you guys can play devil's advocate if you like. If you're kind of on the fence, you can pick the other one just to argue the point. And you guys are going to have a quick, maybe 1 minute to convince me of your side, and then I will give whose lines it anyway style points to whoever wins. You know, like 1 billion million points, depending on how we see. So we'll get a quick one in. I'll try to pick one of the funnier ones, maybe. Okay. If you could cancel either Aces and Eights or the Finger Poke of Doom, which would you do, Jer?
Finger Poke of Doom. I love Aces and Eights.
Yeah, Finger Poke of Doom. It killed WCW.
Okay, so there you go. There was no disagreement, so that's all. We get that? But, if there is, then I'm going to get them to argue against each other. Once again, we'll go Jer, then Johnny this time. Maybe we'll go the other way next time. There are some goofy ones. There are some heartfelt ones. There are some that make sense for right now. Let's see, random ones. Asuka or Shinsuke's entrance? There.
Ooh. Shinsuke.
Yeah, I gotta agree with him on that one. Shinsuke's entrance is special.
Okay, all right. I think that's not where I would have went, but this is not my game to argue. Danhausen, would you rather singles wrestler, tag team wrestler, or manager?
Ooh. Probably tag team. I think he's over as a singles guy, but I think he can kind of work better as a tag team guy.
Can I just say any, all, every?
I mean, you could.
I mean, yeah.
Tell me what you want from him. Not later, right now. What do you think right now works?
I guess it's not so much devil's advocate, but manager. Danhausen is an act, not an actor. As weird as that sounds, like he's the guy that you want to build up to him being part of the match, not have him be part of the match every week. He's better used on the outside as the guy who can throw up the curse and have that big moment, because he's Danhausen, and that's where you get the pop, not in how great he is in the ring. He's sort of the opposite of Orange Cassidy, where Orange, you need to be in the ring every week. It's not the gimmick, it's getting to see beyond that makes Orange great. But Danhausen is the gimmick, and then you want to build up to him being the guy in the ring as the guy who gets in the ring and wrestles, which is why this angle worked so well with, the Orangehausen, because you kind of just, okay, Danhausen's in the ring now. Danhausen wrestles. Danhausen is good. Orange is good. We're best friends. And they go and win the Battle Royal and have the tag match, and it was great. But week to week, he's better served as the guy on the outside, not the guy in the ring.
Fair enough. Jer, your rebuttal?
I don't think he's necessarily wrong. My only point I would bring up to that is it is very, very hard to be a babyface manager. Outside of him doing the curse, he would essentially be useless out there, because he's not going to do, distraction spots or any of that. He's not going to do heel manager shit. So outside of him, like that's one spot, and then he's just hanging out there for 10 minutes. But
I get that.
I do agree. The wrestling, he is more gimmick than wrestler, which hinders him because he's a fine wrestler. He's
serviceable.
Yeah. Tag team title match wrestler.
I award 666 points to Johnny for taking up the role of Devil's Advocate, especially for Danhausen. So 666 points for John.
Very nice. Very happy.
Which feud did we miss out on more? The Jake the Snake versus Hogan feud that we kind of got canceled as soon as we figured that out, or the fact that Sting never wrestled the Undertaker when he came over to WWE, like every single possible person thought. So, which one did we miss out more, Jake Hogan or Sting and Taker?
Jake and Hogan for sure, because at the time it would have happened, which would have been 86, they were both in their prime and probably would have led to some fascinating matches, because outside of Savage, Hogan never really worked smaller guys. And he'd work Bundy and Andre, and he was great in that style of match, but him and Snake would have been entirely different. And, I mean, beside the fact I think Sting and Undertaker would have sucked.
This is the just give your answer part, but, go ahead.
Whatever.
Johnny, what do you think? Your agreement?
Wow. I guess I need clarification on the question. Is this at the point it would have occurred most likely, or at the earliest point it could have occurred? So, could we say Taker Sting 2001, or are we stuck with Sting Taker circa WrestleMania 31?
Yeah, that was the question, is when Sting came over and fought Seth.
Oh, then in that case, Hogan and Jake, because like Jer said, it was the height of both of their peaks. They were both in their prime. The promos would have been absolutely legendary with Hogan and, all his Hulkamaniacs and you say your prayers and eat your vitamins and I'm not afraid of the boogeyman and, all of the wicked, awesome, fun things that could have happened there leading up to what would have been great matches, because like Jer said, Hogan at that time period was always next monster up. Next big guy up, outside of Savage,
was the smaller guy quite often, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Outside of Savage and Piper, outside of Savage and Piper, we never really got to see that side of Hogan. Which I'll be perfectly honest and say that his feuds in the '80s, his better feuds were with smaller guys. Hogan Savage leading into WrestleMania 5, Hogan Piper leading into WrestleMania 1, and as crazy as it sounds, him and Orndorff. Being a smaller guy leading up to the big event. All great Hogan epic feuds, which would have been great.
Fair enough. Who would win in a fight? Haku or any other wrestler in the world? You can take any other possible wrestler or Haku. When you answer, just tell me if it's Haku or not. I want to hear if it's an argument or not. Jer?
Haku.
Honey?
I mean, I think there are maybe 2 or 3 guys in the entirety of the other wrestling category that could probably throw hands with Haku. I think there are guys who could throw hands with Haku. So I guess I kind of have to take the field. I have to take the field because I think there are guys who could beat him, but there's only 1 or 2. I think Peter Maivia and Haku, I think that's a fair toss-up.
Peter Maivia can get thrown in the Pacific without his left eyeball. That's how that would end up.
Is there any, since we actually did reach an impasse here? What makes Maivia what I don't remember hearing any legendary feats of him breaking out of handcuffs or anything like that.
There's lots of stories of him in Samoa. And it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell how much of them are contemporaneous, extemporaneous, sort of built up the myth stories. But he's generally considered as one of those top guys with the. I think there's a story from San Francisco when Peter was a heel, where it's sort of like mirrors the Haku bar story where he beat up all the guys in the bar, but it was a bunch of cops in San Francisco that tried to arrest Peter for something that did not go well for the officers in question. I'd have to take up the specifics.
Fair enough. We'll give you guys a couple more here. We'll maybe hit 3 more. Who had the better career? Lex Luger or Psycho Sid Vicious, whatever you want to call him? Who had the better career, Sid or Lex Luger? Here.
Sid. Only because he didn't ever get his legs cut off and he was always booked strong no matter what.
Yeah, Sid broke his own legs.
Well, I mean, Luger, 93 Luger, didn't end up that well. So
he never had his pee-pee choppy either. Johnny, are you in agreement with the Sid?
I am not. I think Lex had a better career.
Sweet, yes. All right, argue. Tell me why.
Who first?
The hell's wrong with you?
Are you just gonna let us in a cage?
Your t-shirts are too
Johnny first all the time next time. Tell me why Sid had the better career, other than what you just said. Anything more?
Because he would walk in the door and he's a top guy. Pretty much every outside of Continental and his first NWA run. I mean, he walked into WWF. He's working with Flair and Hogan. He walked into WCW, he's working with Sting and Bulldog. He walked back into WWF, he's working with Ahmed and Vader and Shawn. He walked back into WCW, he's working with Savage and Nash. And then he was kind of done after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's do Lex's career line.
Yeah.
He walks into Florida and he's working with Dusty and Brody and JJ. He walks into he walks into Mid-Atlantic. He's working with Flair. He's working with Sting. He's working with Tully. He's working with Arn. He's working with Barry. He's working with Dusty. He's main eventing Great American Bashes with Ric Flair. He's main eventing WCW pay-per-views all through the early 90s. He goes to the he takes a detour through the World Bodybuilding Federation for whatever reason. And then he actually makes his debut in the WWF in 93, and he's working with Perfect for a brief period where he's the narcissist. So Rumble to SummerSlam, Rumble to July 4th, where he turns into the next Hulk Hogan, where he's now main eventing with Yokozuna, wins the Royal Rumble, main events WrestleMania, then goes back to WCW, where he kicks off the Monday Night War by showing up on Nitro, main eventing with Hogan, with Flair, with Sting, with Savage, works the entirety of the end, defeats Hollywood Hogan in prime 1997 territory, when Hogan was at the top of the business, and continues a run all the way through to the end of WCW, and then then everything goes off the rails, but Sid's post-wrestling career isn't much to talk about either. So, I mean, I think everything you can say about Sid, I can say Lex did better.
You think Sid would have worked a second match on the card at WrestleMania with Mr. Fucking Perfect? Sid'd be like, fuck no, I'm going to play softball.
I do like that, this question worked out exactly the way I thought, because that's how I thought of those two guys. But they both got to be champ. They both got to do this. Both got to do that. And they're both like guys who, like I collect wrestling cards. When their wrestling cards come up, people are like, nah, I don't want that shit. You're like, really, with how good their careers went? So yeah, kind of went the way I thought. I like Johnny's addition of beating Hollywood Hogan, because who the hell did that? Like, not too many guys. But I'm also remembered of Sid going up against Michaels and them being like, oh yeah, Michaels, he's our guy, and the crowd being like, I'll say this Sid guy.
I'll say this, and it's the last point I need to make. Lex Luger never shit his pants in the main event of WrestleMania.
Well, I was going to give it to Johnny because Air didn't mention that he was cheered over Michaels, so that was me. I came up with that. So, I will give Johnny a measly 50 points because,
give him a pair of scissors and he can go play fuck himself.
I see what you're doing there. I know that one.
Lex has got a
Oh
squeegee.
no, beat up Vader.
What does that have to do with Sid and Luger?
I thought we were just talking about random WCW backstage stuff.
Okay. Who would you rather be in the passenger seat of a car with, Jeff Hardy or Jimmy Uso? There you go first.
And is jumping out an option?
Can I choose to walk?
Just
Yeah,
tell me whose car you'd jump out of.
Jeff Hardy's, real quick.
I mean, I guess I'll take Jimmy.
Speaking of Jimmy,
DUIs.
Kieron, watch the end of Raw.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Oh, all right.
Good stuff.
I will. I got about like 45 minutes left on that, so I definitely have to.
A major plot point.
Oh
of
yeah,
the
I got
story.
two more. I actually have a long list. I made a long list. I now ride the bus at the end of my shift at work for an hour, so I made a lot of questions. Kind of a tough one. Is getting real heat the way that like MJF does? Is getting real heat like that dead? Is it still usable, or is real heat still a thing?
Okay, I'm gonna mention a quote from Bobby Heenan. He pointed out that when you turn on the TV nowadays, you see people getting shot and getting killed on the news every night. How the fuck are you gonna get heat by hooking a guy's tights? You know, and so here's the thing with MJF specifically. People get legitimately pissed off at him because he does not waver from his gimmick. And I think people in 2023 don't know how to respond to that. People have been conditioned to accept that a wrestler is playing a gimmick, and when they leave the building, that gimmick is turned off and they're just normal Joe. MJF is not. I mean, I'm sure he is, but publicly, outside of the arena, he is not that. He is still MJF. And I think people struggle with the fact that MJF still tries to keep what little kayfabe is left alive through that, especially in an age of social media where his way of... There's something he does on his Twitter that is kind of cool. He will share people's... Like, let's say a kid draws a picture of him. He will share the picture and point out that, you know, your parents should disown you or something. But in reality, what he's doing is obviously sharing this fan-drawn picture of him. But he's framing it through his gimmick. So he's probably legitimately thinks the picture is really cool and he's sharing it publicly. But he's got to add in the, hey, I'm MJF. And exactly, right? And people don't know how to react to that in 2023 because we've been so conditioned that people turn the gimmick off now, and MJF doesn't. And I think it's a positive. I think it's a good thing that he can garner legitimate heat from people, even if it's, hey, this guy spilled a drink on my kid and I would fucking murder him. And
so you think it's alive? Saying it's it's still viable?
I think so.
Okay. Johnny, you think it's still viable to get this real life heat?
I think MJF is the anomaly. Real heat died with the territories.
Fair enough. Well, I guess since you're disagreeing, a little bit onto that, and then I can score.
I think MJF. Everything Jer said about MJF is accurate, but the problem is MJF is the only guy that does it. And you know, I said earlier, Eddie Kingston likes to call himself the last of a dying breed. MJF is the last of the heat seekers. You know, he's the last guy who goes out of his way to try and get real heat. And I'd argue that the problem is so much of his real heat is manufactured. You know, it's not authentic. It's not real. Like, he goes about... MJF is more kayfabe than real heat. And I think Jer's right when he says people don't know how to handle that. Because, you know, for our generation of wrestling fans, the gimmick dropped at the door. You know, like you left the arena, you weren't in the gimmick anymore. And
you can get heels autographs after the show now, where
exactly,
like you're not allowed to fucking do that.
Exactly. You know, whereas MJF is more of a territorial heel in that, you know, you see him on the street and ask him to stop for an autograph, he'll tell you politely to go fornicate yourself, you know, and that's fine because that's an experience that you sort of want with your heels in that territory area mold. But the thing is, as great a heat as MJF is, his heat does not come anywhere close to the heat you got in a lot of territorial stuff. Nobody is going to be taking shots at MJF, literally. You know, nobody's trying to shank him when he walks through the crowd. You know, and those were legitimate. Like last night, and here's the thing that I point to. Last night, when he did his walkabout in the crowd early in the match, do you think that's going to happen if you are... who's a prime example for me to pick here? Is that going to happen?
Mid-South.
I was going to say, if Michael Hayes does a walkabout in the crowd in 1984 Dallas, somebody's going to try and stab him. You know, that's not happening to MJF. He's still getting his wide berth, and he doesn't even need security really to walk around with him because they're not afraid of real heat. You know, real heat is grandma smuggling, you know, a 6-shooter in her giant purse to try and take a shot at the bad guy. You know, like the last time we saw one of those prime examples talked about Hollywood Hogan again. There's that prime example of, I think it was a Nitro in like early 97, where you have the grandma in the front row reaching over the crowd trying to get at Hogan, and Hogan's just like, oh, you know, just playing with her. And that's real heat. MJF's heat does not come anywhere close to that. He is a territorial heel in a non-territory era, and it works because it's different. But I dare say MJF in 1985 is not the top heel in the company.
Okay, that's fair. I am going to award 1 point to Jer because he stuck up for the one guy who can do it.
Fair.
1 point for Jer. You're only down by 716 now. 715 now. Last one. Which one do I want to pick? Yeah, we'll go with this one. Would you add 5 years to Andre's career, or would you add 5 years to Rick Rude's career? Jerry, you're still first.
Rick Rude, 1,000%. I would hate to see Andre lumbering around in 1994.
Yeah, but if you're adding 5 years, he's not. Well,
I think Rick Rude's career got cut off way too soon. He was about to beat Vader for the fucking title.
Sound like you're gonna cry about it.
I am, dude. The promos he cut leading into that show, and then he was not able to make the show. It's depressing. He was like this close.
Gianni Wrestling.
I think the problem isn't with Jared's answer; it's with the question. Because if we tack 5 years onto Andre's career, Jared's right. We get to 1994, and you know, by that point, Andre was still lumbering around. Whereas, you know, Rick Rude's career got cut off in 1994, and who knows where he could have been, you know. 5 years to the end of his career should have been 2007, 2008, not 98, 99. You know, so I think that's...
Well, I mean his in-ring career, so I'm talking 94.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, even if you tack on the 5 years to the end...
It went to 99.
From where Rude's career should have ended... Tack on 5 years should have put him into the Ruthless Aggression era, not the height of the Attitude era. You know, and that's sort of the difference of the question. Like, for me, and again, this just comes down to personal preference, but as crazy as it sounds, I think there were a lot of guys who could have had the career trajectory that Rick Rude had through the Attitude era. Kurt Hennig, Brian Pillman. There are lots of guys who did what Rick Rude would have done. I think tack 5 more years to the end of Andre is bigger for the business, because I think then you get a much more quick, monumental rise of the next era of Giants. I think a babyface Andre circa 91 going up against an upstart Undertaker, makes him in a much different way that by the time you get to Andre Hogan, it's a very different character. It's a very different story because he's taken the Giant and put him to bed. He's rested the Giant. It's one of those stories Taker likes to tell, that Andre had a story in his back pocket for him. If you hear stories about Andre, it's that, he never liked the big guys. He never liked the Giants because I'm the Giant. That was his attitude. He hated Big John Studd because he was big. He hated Bundy because he was big. He hated Kamala because he was big. And
it was the Ugandan Giant. So.
Exactly.
And then he liked him after he saw the gun.
Yeah.
Well, he liked him after he, paid him the respect of, don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
But it's... Taker tells the story that Andre he liked him, and he always had that backstory. One day we're going to have a big feud. We're going to have a big story. And Taker tells that, and he'd always ask, "What story is that, boss?" "Just wait, we'll do it one day." And he never told them. I think an invested Andre is better because he was larger than life. He was bigger than pro wrestling. He was bigger than the business. That's why he was able to star in The Princess Bride. That's why he was in the Honeycomb commercials. He was Andre the Giant. He transcended wrestling. And I think 5 more years of Andre would have been better for the business than 5 more years of Rude, because 5 more years of Rude is 5 more years of a guy who, while would have a great career trajectory, would have been interchangeable with other people.
And plus, we would have seen Andre actually be able to work a match with his son.
Yeah,
Do we got? Can you add one of those cricket sounds in there?
I mean, I could, but since this is episode 0, I'm not going to.
It won't make sense after I said that, though. So we'll just, we'll just imagine it in our heads.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for us.
Wait, who gets the points? We need to know points there.
Oh, points. Yeah, points for that one. How about... what should Andre weigh? 400? 440?
Something like that.
Or something? 440 points for Johnny. Jerry, you got your ass kicked this week. See how you do next week or next show when you get to go last. There might be an advantage to going last, because I feel like I kept hearing compelling arguments from Johnny after. So we might have to tweak the format so you guys both go last. Next week, next show, you can go last, and we'll see if you can kick Johnny's ass. That's gonna do it for us for this episode 0 pilot. Fun stuff. I hope everybody gets to hear it. I had a fun time, so I think it'll be fun and releasable, and it's not a terrible piece of... I have been on pilot shows where we've been like, that fucking thing can never see the light of day. We need to do that again.
Yeah, you were on Wings that one time. It was terrible.
Cricket.
I've done a lot of... I don't think I've done as much podcasting as Johnny, probably not even by a long shot, but I've done a lot of different shows. And there was some that went like, oh my god, this is awesome. And there was some that were like, we need to do something about this. It did not work well, so. Yeah, so I had a good time. Is there anything that we want to plug other than, of course, our Facebook group and our Discord? I guess... the QR code. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you pointing at me on my screen. So you're like, oh yeah, guy, look at his hair. Like, fantastic, beautiful waves of hair. You can click on the QR code. It'll bring you to the Facebook. It'll bring you to the Facebook.
Facebook, yeah.
You know what? Just click it. Yeah. It's either going to be the Facebook or the Discord.
Don't click it. You'll just pause us.
Each other. Yeah.
Use the QR code and you'll end up here.
It is, it's a fantastic community. It's really fun. We got all sorts of funny stuff. You'll hear all the news. Jared pays attention to every single wrestler in the world. Twitter. So you get any good Twitter exchanges, we'll see it. There's always memes in there, and great community. Anything you want to say before we head off into the sunset, Mr. Johnny?
Yeah, if you have a wicked awesome name suggestion for this fun podcast, post it in the group. Hit us up on Twitter. There's lots of places you can find us. Suggest a name for us, because Dark Match Drive Podcast is weak.
Terrible.
So help us come up with names before we have to come up with names, and we suck at that. So give us names, or we're going to end up with something awful.
We came up with 10 great names that were taken.
Valid.
Yeah. We're late to the party on this one. But,
Mr. Jer, is there anything else you'd like to plug or promote before you go and have a good night? And
just check out the Facebook, check out the Discord. We're really hammering the Discord content. Lots of good stuff there, plenty of discussion going on right now in general chat, and we talk every week during TV in the chats, and it's a really cool community. We just hit over 200 people in the Facebook after 14 months, so
and
I'm seeing I have the Discord up here, and I'm seeing we got a category for AEW, Dragon Gate, GCW, Noah, ROH. There's a women's wrestling section here. There's a feud of the month. There's we got conversations for everything, and we got people in here who like everything. So if you're that guy, if you're like one of these two guys up here, and you watch crazy Japanese man in a box fighting a giant panda, they'll talk about it. They can talk.
We'll talk about Ken that way.
Find other people who know about your crazy wrestling obsession.
His name is Ken the Box, and he has a name. Learn it.
What's the giant panda's name?
Giant Panda.
Andreza Giant Panda.
I didn't harp on that one because Giant Panda is defective, but Ken the Box, real guy.
And the Giant Panda will be at Tokyo Joshi Pro Grand Princess in 2 or 3 weeks.
See that shit that he just said there? That's what I'm talking about. Like that, if you know about that stuff,
no matter how obscure it is,
knows about this stuff.
No matter how obscure it is, you will find someone that has either seen it or wants to see it in the Dark Match Drive group.
That's gonna do it for us here at the hopefully only named for one more week Dark Match Drive podcast. See you later, guys.